Decision making in an organization regarding the operations management. Most operations decisions involve many alternatives and options that can have different impacts on cost or profits in an organization. The typical operation decisions can include questions like what resources are needed and in what amount, or it could be related to the timing. When will each resource be needed, or when should the work be scheduled, or when should the materials and other supplies be ordered? Or it could be in terms of locations. Where will the work be done? Or it could be about how will the product or service is designed, or how will the work be done, or how will resources be allocated. Or it could be in terms of what person or um, who will do the work. General approach to decision making. Modeling is a key tool and a popular tool that is used by all decision makers. But what is a model? A model is an abstraction of reality. It's a simplification of the system or anything that you want to model and study. Though models can be different from each other, there are common features between all models. For example, all models are simplification of the real life phenomena or the system that they represent. So that means that there are some aspects of the real life system that is omitted and not considered or reflected in the model. All models omit unimportant details of the system that they want to mimic. So that the purpose of this is to focus the attention on the more important or the most important aspects of the system. So in this process of simplification or simplifying or um, getting rid of omitting the unimportant details, it is important what you consider as important and not important. If you make a mistake in this process, then you're going to have a bad model, a wrong model, a model that produces the wrong result. There are different types of models depending on the type of system that you want to study or make decision for, and also depending on the type of decision that you want to make. There are physical models that in appearance, they look alike to the real life system that they want to represent. Examples of physical models are miniature cars, miniature trucks, miniature airplanes, and miniature buildings. Then there are schematic models. Schematic models are more abstract than the physical models. That means that they have less resemblance to the real life system that they represent. Examples of schematic models are charts, diagrams, graphs, etc. Then we have the mathematical models that are even more abstract than the schematic models. Mathematical models, as the name says it, they use numbers and formulas and symbols to represent a system. Understanding models. There are some keys to successfully using a model in decision making. Those are the purpose of the model or what it does. What does the model do? Next is the way the model has been used to generate the result that has produced. And after having the results, the interpretation of those results also is very important. And next is the assumptions or limitations of the model. What has the model eliminated or omitted and has considered unimportant from the that has been eliminated to be considered from the real system. So these are the four important keys to be able to successfully implement a model. Benefits of models. Models are generally easier to use and less expensive to deal with compared to the real system that they represent. Models are required the user to organize and sometimes quantify information regarding the system. So that's a good thing to organize and quantify information. Models increase on our understanding of the problem related to the system. So using the model, we get a better understanding and deeper understanding of the system. Models also enable managers and decision makers to analyze what if questions that would lead to better and deeper understanding of the system. Models can serve as a consistent tool for evaluation and evaluation of the system, and would provide a standardized format for analyzing any problem related to the system. Last but not least, this is true about the mathematical models. Mathematical models would enable the users and decision makers to bring the power of mathematics in decision making and problem solving. So we talked about the benefits of models in decision making. Now it's time to talk about the limitations of models. When using models, especially mathematical models that are dealing with the quantitative information more, it could be that there would be more emphasis on the quantitative information and sometimes at the expense of the qualitative information of the system that we study. So there is a risk of disemphasizing or undervaluing or undermining or even ignoring the qualitative aspect of system. Also, models can be incorrectly applied. So it could be a correct models, but incorrectly used. Or it could be none of those. It could be a correct models, correctly used, but the result that it produces may be actually misinterpreted. And this is a common risk and very widespread phenomenon. Especially today's with the advanced computers and softwares, there are sophisticated models easily at the hands of uninformed users. So this is a real risk. Also, it is important to know that using models in decision making does not guarantee good decisions. And this is also can be a risk because it can give the user or the decision maker this illusion that because he or she using models, so he might have an overestimation of the method that he or she is using in decision making. Quantitative approaches in decision making. A quantitative approach to decision making is an approach that usually uses mathematical models to find optimal solution to certain problem. Examples of those are linear programming, which we're going to talk about later on as a chapter. Queuing techniques, inventory models, we're going to have examples of those later on. Project models, forecasting techniques, and statistical models. The use of quantitative approaches has become more popular due to the advances that have been made in computation and computers, calculators, and also softwares. A system approach to organizations and its operations. What is a system? A system is a set of interrelated parts that must work together for a purpose. The business organization can be considered as a system that is composed of subsystems or parts. We talked about the three basic functional areas of an organization. So if we view that organization as a system, those parts actually can be considered, or financial areas can be considered as subsystems. So we have the marketing part, which is the marketing subsystem, the operation subsystem, and the finance subsystem. The system approach emphasizes the interrelationships between the systems. Its main theme is that the whole system is greater than the sum of its parts. The output and objective of the organization take precedence over those of any one subsystem. So the view of an organization as a system is the big picture. That's the system view. Generally, it would help if, for studying any subject, it would help if we study also the history or the evolution of a brief history of the evolution of that subject. This is also true for operation management. So here we will study briefly the historical evolution of operation management and also the movement or the incidents, the historical incident that happened and the impact of those in the evolution of operation management. Starting with the industrial revolution, which happened in 1770 in England, and then the scientific management, or is the idea of thinking of management as a science that started years ago, decades ago, and it helped to shape the operation management. Also, the impact of human relations movement on operation management and decision models and management science, especially the quantitative models and mathematics, statistics, and computer on the evolution of operation management. Let's start off with the Industrial Revolution. To understand the impact of the Industrial Revolution on operation management and the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution, the impact that it had, it would help if we know what was before the Industrial Revolution. Pre-Industrial Revolution, the organizations and shops, and there were small systems which they had highly skilled workers that they could do any of the jobs and tasks. They would work on any parts. And they use usually simple, flexible tools to produce small quantities of customized goods. This was called craft production. And Industrial Revolution changed that. So Industrial Revolution began in England in 1770s. And one of the elements that was very impactful in Industrial Revolution era was the division of labor that was actually popularized by Adam Smith. Division of labor is actually an economic concept that states that dividing the production process into different stages would enable workers to focus and specialize on a specific task. So Adam Smith realized that doing this would actually increase the productivity of those jobs and those systems. Because instead of having laborers, highly skilled laborers that they could do any of the work, if you assign them on a specific task and then let them to work on those tasks, they would become highly skilled and highly specialized, and they could do the job much better. So that was a big element in Industrial Revolution. Another important and key element in the Industrial Revolution was the invention of the steam engine and the application of a steam engine in the industries. So of course, machines can work much better given the situation, much better than humans and laborers, because um, they do not get sick, they do not die, they do not go hungry, and they can work tirelessly. So if we can produce and apply very productive and effective machines, it's going to beat every labor. So these were the basic elements of Industrial Revolution that changed the operations management and how systems and organization and businesses worked. The impact of the evolution of management or scientific management on the evolution of operation management. Back in time, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, management was considered different from what we know it today. People were not considering management as a science. They did not use any scientific attitudes or measurements or approach toward management. But there were some movements built up by some people, especially engineers, some engineers that changed that attitude. Among those was the Frederick Winslow Taylor. So Frederick believed that management can be considered as a science. So you can actually use scientific tools and break down the job of a management, different parts of an organization and different processes, and study those, observe those, measure those, and analyze those to improve the work efficiency of the whole organization. And also by applying, for example, economic incentives. So the emphasis was on, of course, on maximizing the output. And you could achieve that, this movement believed, by considering or approaching the management in a scientific way. That's why Frederick Taylor is considered as the father of the scientific management. There were a number of other pioneers that also contributed a lot to the movement of scientific management. Among those is Frank Gilbert. So Frank Gilbert was an industrial engineer who helped to develop the principles of motion economy that would apply to incredibly small portions of a task. He is known as a father of motions study. Another contributor to this movement was Henry Gantt. Henry Gantt recognized the value of non-monetary rewards to motivate workers and also developed a widely used system for scheduling known as Gantt chart. The next contributor was Henry Ford. Henry Ford, as you may know it from the company Ford, the car maker, he was a great industrialist, and he employed scientific management techniques in his factories that actually became popular and is actually applied widely across the globe. So among those is moving assembly line, and also the movement that actually helped the idea of mass production. So it increased the output, the efficiency of manufacturing a lot. Human relation movement and its impact on operation management. Knowing that every organization and business and industries, no matter what they do, what they produce, or the type of service that they provide, because they have workforce, human workforce. So the human relation movement is very impactful in how the organization works, interrelate with each other, and also how efficient and productive it is. So the human relation movement actually has a great impact on the evolution of operation management and operations as well. There are several contributors to the human relation movement that I have listed them here. So Lillian Gilbert, for example, for the application of psychology, the Elton Mayo studies on worker motivation in 1930s, and the Abraham Maslow, the famous and popular psychologist, for the motivation theory in 1940s and the hierarchy of needs in 1954, and Friedrich Herzberg for two-factor theory in 1959, Douglas McGregor for the theory of X and theory of Y in 1960, and also William Auchi for theory of Z in 1981. Another contributor to the evolution of operation management was the evolution and improvement in decision models and analytics, especially mathematics and statistics and computation. So among those are Harris, the mathematical model for inventory management in 1950, and Dodge, Roaming, and Shewart for the statistical procedures for sampling and quality control, which are widely used in businesses and organizations. Tippett for statistical sampling theory in 1935. Operation research, or OR, which is used for optimization. Um, and it started actually for the application of OR, operation research, in warfare, but then it extended to normal use or non-war use. And also the linear programming advances by George Dantzig, which was a mathematician at University of Berkeley, a professor. So we talked about the evolution of operation management and the past. It's now time to talk about the current status of operation management. To talk about that, we need to consider and study the current factors that impact operation management in today's world. Among those, of course, is technology. Technology has always been a big factor in operation management and in organization and businesses. In the past, in present, and it's going to be a big factor in future as well. Another factor and key issue is the action and the risk management for today's businesses, considering the risks that threaten the organization in today's world. Another aspect and key issue is the political and economic conditions of today's world. Whether it's an election, whether there is a war, whether there is a famine, whether there is a pandemic, it's going to impact, as we have experienced it greatly, on all aspects of operation management. Another key factor is the environmental issues, which is a big and hot topic now, which wasn't before in the past. And also the social and ethical is also another factor that impact the operation management. For the technology factor, we can think about all the technology advancement and all the buzzes that goes around today. For example, the artificial intelligence and of course internet, the Internet of Things, and Uber, the automations, and all of that. Those have big impact and it's going to have big impact in the future as well on operation management and all sorts of aspects of organizations. Active risk management. One of the characteristics of today's businesses and organization is, especially for the giants one, is that they have a very complex supply chains. There are organizations that they have offices and facilities in every part of the world. So this makes the organization, the whole organization, susceptible to any part of those locations if they are susceptible to the economics or political or any other conditions in that specific location, whether it's natural weather conditions, whatever is going to be a threat to that part of the supply chain is going to be a threat to the whole organization. So because of this complexity, this is going to be a risk that needs to be managed, which wasn't an issue 100 years ago because we didn't have these complex supply chains back then. The other key elements and uh, important to consider for risk management is managing the innovation. Because of the advancing technology and science, the growth of innovation and technology has exponentially grown. So it's important for you, and also because of the competitors in the market, that you upgrade to the latest innovation and technology possible so that you can compete with your competitors and also to be able to grow. Another important aspects of today's organization and today's businesses is that we have realized that our resources is limited. And the reason for that is we have overpopulated years. We have about 8 billion, something like that, people on earth now, and we have these giant organizations and businesses to work and operate to feed and provide services to this big population. So even with the how big earth in our eyes is and how big the ocean is and all the resources, because of this overpopulation growth, mm, we we have to realize that our resources is limited. So that's a risk also to consider that needs to be managed. And other things to consider are for risk management are redundancy, agility to offset the effects of weather, the political risk, earthquakes, or any other natural events and threats that going to be a risk to an organization that needs to be dealt with. Another key element to understand the current status of organization today is the political and economic considerations. Among those is, of course, globalization. Globalization is a process of interaction and integration of the people from different cultures, different countries, and companies and governments, a process that mainly has been driven by international trades and investment, and also has been exponentially growth by the advance of information technology and IT, and also internet. So this process, globalization, has affected all other countries and all other cultures, their environments, and also their even political systems and economic development and prosperity. So because of globalization, the world is no longer consist of isolated countries. Anything that happens in any part of the world is going to be affected other part of the world. Another key element is the commitment to market economy and democracy, which wasn't a thing in the past. People did not care about the what the customers want, what the market really wants, and there wasn't much actually competition in the past. So one of the characteristics of today's organization is they pay a lot of attention to the end in the market, the market demand, the customers, and customer has a more say than before. Another element is the effects of regulation that um, different governments in different parts of the world, they impose these regulations to impact the organization and how they process, so they can have governed actually whatever they want. But because of the globalization, that's going to have an impact on all other parts of the world. But regulation is not a bad thing. Regulation can actually help to manage organization according to the policies set, especially in a democracy societies, wanted by people and desirable by people. Another key element to consider for the today's status of business and organization is environmental concerns. So consumers demand businesses, and also they demand the government, if you said democratic system, to have set in a place a policy to push and force organization to work in an environmentally friendly manner or produce a product that is environmental friendly. So you might have heard about the term sustainability. That means using resources in a ways that do not harm the ecological systems that we live in. So that would actually support human existence. It wouldn't be a threat to us and our existence, especially in the future. So these environmental concerns actually have affected all aspects of businesses. For example, the product and service design, it has the design of the product and service has to be environmental friendly. It shouldn't harm our environment and the ecological system. Also, the consumer education programs, and on the other end of the supply chain, the consumers, for example, the recycling of the products so that it wouldn't hurt the environment. Also, the disaster preparation and response such that we can actually control the impact of the disaster. Also, supply chain waste management, that we do not just throw out garbage and waste in the oceans and harm the environment and the ecological of the oceans. Also, the outsourcing decisions is another part of the organization that would have been affected actually by the environmental concerns. So, for example, if the organization is in a democratic society or it's run by a democracy, then the consumers would actually demand, for example, an organization to not outsource any part of the supply chain to a country or a government that doesn't care about um, these concerns, sustainability or environmental concerns. So even that part also has been affected by environmental concern.